welcome to stage 4 of the dirt racing series. We're on the Chomper course today for some more climbing. It's the Queen stage, and it's certainly a bit different to what we've faced so far, with 2 repeats of the Temple KOM, with the Castle KOM coming just before and a sprint just before that. So it's one segment after another, or at least tough parts as the segments are going to be a bit varied this week. Just going to take a quick look at the team standings before we get into that though. So we're in the Gold 3 category today, which is similar to what used to be some of the B+ teams, but with some of the outstanding individuals moving up, some of the riders that struggle more possibly moving down. But we see a couple of returning teams, like Dirty Eagle Fang, Dirt Cobra Kai, TBR 47T, always been strong. And we've got Team CLS Juggernauts leading the way so far, winning 2 out of the 3 races, with Dirty Eagle Fang 3 points behind. So we've got 3 stages left, including today, so still a closable gap. Well, I mean, definitely still a closable gap, but a closable gap even if CLS takes second on all the other stages. And so we've got Cobra Kai narrowly behind 54, Level Racing, big turnout for them across the categories, which is great to see, just narrowly behind Cobra Kai. So it's top 4 are all quite close and possibly bridgeable into the podium spots. It's going to be very tight between them. Then we've got another Equip team with us, another Level Racing. We've got the Sapphires this time, closely with Team Velo, or Terminal Velocity, as they've named themselves. Then another tight 3 at the back, trying to avoid the Wooden Spoon, TBR 47T, Belgian Swift Riders Gold 3, and Hiss Breckeros. So notice BZR Gold had a really strong team time race result last week, 49-48, placed them in 5th place even in the standings. So that's a big move up the field, and we'll be interested to see if they can repeat that today. Moving on to the course, we mentioned we've got some interesting segments here. We've got this country sprint leading off the way at 2.2 kilometers. It's a downhill 7.5 second sprint for FTS, and we're going to repeat that on lap 1, but that'll be the second time through the sprint you see, as the first time's just the lead-in. And these are 2 separate FTS segments, so it's fastest through the segment. Whoever sets the fastest time, or the fastest 10 times shall we say, will get points in lap 1, and then whoever sends it and gets the fastest, or won the fastest 10 times on the second go through, will get the points again that you can see on the right hand side. In between that we have the Temple KOM, which is a dirt climb looking at 4.5 minutes roughly, approaching possibly up to 5, and that's a very tough climb, very steep to begin with, slow speeds because of the dirt. It's very attritional. I'm going to see the field blown apart there, and so the tactics start to come into play with which group you can hold on to. Do you want to work off the front? Do you want to keep people away? Do you want to push? It becomes very, very interesting at that point, seeing what teams decide to do, how they work together. And the final lap, instead of having a segment at the Temple KOM, we have it on the Castle KOM instead. Both of those climb segments are first across the line, so it's not the fastest through, it's just the first across the line. So being in that lead group after that first Temple KOM is really important for those points. While some of the chase groups might have the sprint points available to them, especially if the chase groups are bigger than the lead group, that front group really is key for all those points available today. So it's going to favour the climbers, and definitely a course where you might want to push away if you're one of those stronger teams who favour climbs over, say, just pure sprints. Looking at who we've got today, I think Level Velo, or Level Esports we're now called, definitely going to be one of those teams targeting it, and same with Team CLS. They're the 2 teams that have, 3 teams with Southborough Wheelers, who, I'm not sure who that rider will be actually riding for though, who have these riders who used to be in the A category, and so they're generally a bit fitter, a bit better climbers, higher watt per kilos for 20 minutes, and if you've got a higher 20 minute, you usually have a higher 5 minute, which is what this course is about. Whoever has the highest 5 minute watts per kilo is really going to be wanting to push the pace on the Temple, dropping other riders, but ensuring they also have enough left at the top to sprint. So what's important here is both the climbs finish on a flat top, So ultimately it is going to come down to a bit of a sprint on the climbs. The question is, who's left at that point? How many people have you managed to drop if you're one of those lead riders? See, one rider getting out very fast there. Never seen that quite so impressive gap instantly. Looks like we're having the same issues with viewing as we were before. Hopefully people all go the right way this time. But we start off, we're onto this downhill to begin with. So it's a long kind of relaxed, especially in this division. It will be a very chilled downhill, with riders not really looking to do too much or break anyone. I see a couple of the other races, seen people pushing the pace a bit. I'm not quite sure why, but we have seen it. All these riders tend to be quite experienced, been around the block a bit, move their way up bit by bit into this category. So just to identify some of the kits for you, I think one of the important ones will be the level rubies, which is this nice, almost, I'll call it pink, it's just easier, Zwift kit. And we'll see if we can find the level sapphires for you as well. So level sapphires appear to be in this yellow kit. I'm not quite sure why that's sapphires, maybe they ran out of blue kits to find. The Velos one certainly looks a bit more like a sapphire with a beautiful kit. Just see there on your screen. Really like that Velos kit. So two of the CLS riders just getting towards the front. I don't think they're particularly pushing the pace, doing much, but they've just hit it. Oh, take it back. Adam Bikeworks. Not quite sure what his actual name is, but it's been around the block a lot, raced against him a few times. Just pushing the pace a bit here. Do have a little incline on that section there, so it's not a total waste of energy. But again, as we come into the segment here, you might just be able to see in the top left corner of the minimap, see teams jostling for position. Ideally, you want to be towards the back here. And just position yourself so you have the most riders possible to push through hard. See a couple of riders kicking very hard there. 10.7 watts per kilo. Not quite sure why. It seems like we've got that's exactly why we have a huge train out the back. And I think a few riders might have got a little bit nervous with how big that train was getting. See Lee Wild, great to see him back in racing. Oh no, key figures on Zwift. Just letting that gap open up just slightly. Racing for the level rubies. And so we want to see riders start pushing around now. A couple of riders have left it a bit too late, and see Lee Wild may be leaving a little bit late as well here. See Ian from Cobra Kai. Possibly not. He's got the speed up quickly. It's going to be very tight between the two of them. You see him flying through the group. Absolutely no. Remember, it's FTS, so being first through the line doesn't make too much difference. It's going to be tight between the two of them. Oh, it looks like Lee Wild just took it there. 7.48 versus Ian from Cobra Kai's 7.55. And then we've got Price from Cobra Kai in second on the Eagle Fang riders in fourth. Velos rider in fifth. So a bit disappointing maybe for CLS. Possibly they weren't targeting it, but look how spread out the field is. That sprint really did some damage. Thankfully there's a little bit of flats here. I can't imagine anyone will actually get dropped here, but some riders are definitely going to have to do a lot more work. As you see those gaps, you can see, you might be able to see a couple of people really pushing hard to get back on there. Iron Yusa from Cobra Kai. Really kicking there. And it's a bit of an interesting one. I tend to find that it's better to do exactly what he did. Just kick hard, get back on, and then rest. Yes, you waste maybe a little bit more energy kicking hard, but having been able to rest for longer puts you in a better position, at least for me, in terms of getting my heart rate down, getting comfortable again before you start the climb, especially with the climb following so shortly afterwards. But what you want to do when you're closing that gap is, as well, if you've got people behind you, you know, it's a bit savage, but if you kick really hard, it's much harder for them just to draft off to you. They then have to do their own hard work to get on. And, you know, that can be the difference between people getting dropped and not getting dropped. You open up that 5 meter gap and they have to do a lot more work. Whereas some people just kind of ease their way back to the group, and it makes it so easy for those riders behind just to sneak on without doing any extra effort. You know, I certainly appreciate it when people do that, as I regularly find myself off the back, having not paid attention. Maybe I shouldn't be telling everyone this. But it's definitely one of those things, when you're bridging across, especially bridging off the front as well, if you're trying to get across to a lead rider, do it aggressively, do it hard, otherwise people are just going to use your wheel, and you're wasting energy that you could have saved by being sat behind someone else doing that. For those who are watching, I saw it with Chris towards the finish there. Tiny Chris, Dirty Beast, Down and Beastly. Kicked really hard to bridge across the gap, and it meant those behind also had to go into the red numbers to do it. Whereas if he'd gone across at maybe 7-8 watts per kilo, he'd have been doing that. Those behind him would have been doing 5, and just getting a nice, relatively coast the ride back to that rider who'd gone off the front. So as we start to hit the castle K, remember no points available for it here, but again it is one of those sections that's a bit steeper. Things can go on, and see on the southward wheelers. Barham looks like he doesn't have any teammates then going by the kit. So again, riding solo, you know, people are more than welcome to, but it's great if you can bring your team along. If you just want to try out the series, see how you enjoy it, go for it. But it is meant to be a team series, so it's great to see people coming once, finding it, and then bringing more and more teams year on year, and that's what we tend to see. Everyone who's come for a series has come back the next series with at least another team, and it's kept growing and growing because of that. See Hiss with a lot of riders here, really good to see. It does make a big difference managing to get, you know, I'd say probably 6 or more riders. The difference between 5 and 6 isn't too much. 4 doesn't really leave you much room if something goes wrong, but you know, can be fine. But when you get 5 and 6 versus 7 or 8, it makes a big difference of being able to kind of bring in a few other tactics, sacrificing riders in certain situations to help out. See Mycas from Hiss just pushing the pace at the front here. And this isn't one way you're going to break away. It's just doing enough work to make it hard for the rest of the group, not allowing anyone to kind of recover too much after that sprint. I think that's one of the key ones for the kind of riders who are a bit stronger on the climbs, is those sprinters will have just done a big effort. If you go at a chilled pace through here, even though you're not necessarily going to break away off the front, you're not going to make a huge benefit for yourself. What you can do is make those sprinters work so much harder. See someone's just gone off the back. Just check out who it is. It looks like Collins from Level Sapphires. An ideal for them. Not sure if they're going to have... They look to be only 4 riders in that front group. It looks like, yep, they're down to 3 riders in the front group, so that's going to hurt, especially before the Castle KOM. It looks like Kurt Wall from Eagle Fang's going to be struggling as well, so they're not... It's going to hurt them a little bit. I think they do still have 4 in the front group, though. Maybe even 5, which makes a big difference. So, you know, it's the top 4 riders' points that count, and getting dropped this early on in this race means there's very few points then available to you. You're not likely to find a big group to hit the sprint segment. And you're just going to go... I mean, you've got to go a long way solo, which is unpleasant enough on its own. Especially while still fighting for places. See CLS here, Widowson just pushing the pace off the front. I think he just gave a little kick while in the group, and he's just settling into a comfortable rhythm. He's not really going crazy, but he's just flowing through the group a bit, taking advantage, and then settling back into something he can hold. Starting to see people getting stretched out though. Riders are definitely suffering. See Hisp again leading the way, pushing the pace. Been all over it today. Really good to see them. It's a team we don't necessarily see a ton of in certain series. They're primarily a Spanish-speaking team, and so sometimes you don't see them signing up, possibly for that reason. I'm not sure why. Really great to have them today. They're absolutely been crushing it across the board. So a couple of riders pushing. This one thing you do have to watch out for. Coming into these segments, lots of riders still think that they are segments. They don't necessarily read the instructions beforehand, because, you know, people have lives, things get in the way. It's not always a, oh, they're just stupid kind of thing. They're normally reasonable reasons, but it's also a great place to get a bit of an advantage going to the segment. Remember, the climb coming up the Temple KOM is a foul segment, so it's just first across the line. There's no benefit to starting at the back. So every little kind of second or 2, 4 seconds it looks like here, you gain over other riders can make the difference. But it looks like they're just sat up here, so they aren't necessarily going for that. They're not trying to get a jump, because, you know, you see people going for a sprint that isn't there, and people tend to just kind of ignore and being like, oh, they've just gone for the wrong thing. When in fact, it's a great opportunity to go for an attack. sure Lee Wild might remember from one of the series he hosted. Not going to try and pronounce it because I get the order wrong every single time. It's the World Indoor Cycling Rankings. I think that was it. Well, we saw a couple of teams doing a very similar tactic and managing to break away and stay away. And you see so many of these HISP jerseys in here. I think it's just that the colour stands out so much. A couple of the equipped ones as well nearby. Definitely having a good day out so far. Do seem to have dropped a couple more riders. So it's quite a big field, 52 riders. Especially for when we've got a large number of categories. It's not just your standard 4. We're on the Zwift Racing app system for categorization. It creates a bit of variation, lots more categories, closer racing, which we've seen, and different racing, I think, which is the important one. It's not just your standard sprint fest. See 2 of the Cobra Kai riders off the back, so that's going to be a bit disappointing for them, especially chasing down the likes of CLS and Eagle Fang. So into the segment now, and this is the steep, hard section. You want to hit it hard and do a lot of work here. There's time to rest slightly. I wouldn't say recover, but you can rest slightly. 3-4 watts per kilo on the Flanders section ahead. Wow, 7 watts per kilo. This is what I expected to see earlier in the platinum categories. We didn't quite get there. But you see, level racing with this. One of the rides from Sapphire, Furler, and Galagos. Level Ruby's definitely one of the favourites today. She's been outstanding at the moment, and this, of course, seems to suit her really, really well. Looking at the numbers. Really low ranking. Says done bits on Zwift. And so making that gap early is really important, especially having another rider with you is ideal, because no one really wants to be the person who does the work on this ladder section to chase down, and someone has to. It's going to tire them out and waste energy, as these riders can just keep grinding away. They've got that 4-second gap, and it causes people to have to chase. And maybe they'll get back on, but what it really does is split this group up, and you can see it happening right here. The bigger group's actually towards the back, which is the first one from the race I've watched today. And that'll make a big difference in terms of tactics on the chase if it stays that way as we go up. Still looks like we've got the 2 riders up the road from Level Velo, 2 different teams, importantly, from Level Velo. One of the Velos riders, Team CLS, managing to get someone in there. And Mr. Van der Tom from Eagle Fang. Maybe not quite living up to his namesake, being in 5th, but it's up there and managing to cling on to this little group of chase riders. Same with Parky from Eagle Fang as well. Level Velo Rubies, getting another rider in there. So it stays like this. It's probably going to work out in Level Velo Rubies and Eagle Fang's favour. Again, we've got a lot of foul segments, so it looks like CLS just managing to get another rider into that front group. That could be critical for them. D Little, really well done to him. That's going to be a big move. Having 2 riders from each of those teams will make a big difference, because all these riders, looks like we're down to 10 in this breakaway. 9 even. 10 even. Somewhere around that, I think it is 10. So all these riders are going to be getting first across the line points at the top here, and importantly on the second lap, if they stay away from that chase group, all of them are going to be getting first across the line points there as well. Going back to the front, looks like Elise pushing the pace again, working really hard. It's a fantastic effort, and I'm very glad I'm not racing against her, because there's no way I'd be holding on to that pace up the front. Absolutely sensational numbers. Just to keep grinding away. It looks like still got a rider with her, further from Sapphire, also doing really nicely there. Just managing to hold the wheel. A little bit heavy, has a little bit benefit on the flats. But they're managing just to keep this gap, and what that's doing is just keeping the rest, like this chase group, away from anyone further back. See Parky not quite making it across there. They're just for Eagle Fang. I can't remember didn't see if he got dropped there, but again, that's going to be tough on them in the front group. TBR having a rider there, it's good for them, especially if they can get into that lead pack. But that gap's starting to open up now. 7 seconds, and that could very well be the end of that in terms of those getting back onto the leaders before the top of the climb. They'll probably hold off the big chase group behind for points, especially coming to this flatter section. But I don't think they're going to get back onto the leaders as we come into the downhill. The real question is whether these two up the road, Elise and Mark, for level velo, will get caught by anyone behind. So this chase group of 4 on the downhill. Oh, it was a chase group of 5. You see another one gone. Another Eagle Fang rider. It's really tough for them to be up there with 2 riders in the front group and they're down to none of them. Where this group of 4 can jump back on before the downhill will probably contribute a lot to whether these lead riders stay away from the huge chase group that's following them on. So as we come across the line, it looks like Furler currently in there, but Elise is going to take this if she has any sprint there. It's going to be very tight. It looks like Furler just took that. You can ignore the times left. It's first across the line, so it looks like Furler took it then. Van der Bosch for Team CLS. You see some of the solo riders coming through. And points available here. It's worth giving an effort. That's an extra point there for Parker. Bates there will get 5 points. Parky for Eagle Fang will get 5 points as well. Then looking back down the road, still quite a big gap behind him. 9 seconds, then we start to get this much bigger chase group. What are we, at least 10, 12 riders in there? So on that downhill, that's really going to come through 3 of the CLS riders, 2 of the Eagle Fang. So the speed they're going to carry on the downhill will be very interesting, especially with the new pack dynamics. See just how much time they can take. I suspect on this dirt section they may not make as much. On the road they really will, where there's no super tuck available for these riders. Whereas on this downhill, if they're going fast enough, one of these, if not both of them, will be able to super tuck. But only the lead rider of that big group will be able to. Can see from this view just the gaps behind. It's quite big. It looks like that gap behind the group behind even's got 4 riders in, 2 of the CLS riders. So again, that's really strong push from D Little to move up the field around halfway on that climb and get into that lead group. That could have really helped them come the final points today, especially depending on how things go. But could take that back as the group behind has just caught them. Really impressed, especially from just 3 riders chasing down a group of 4. It's not a huge advantage, but every little does help. And now we'll see if this bigger group of 7 can chase down the 2 up the road. That 10-second gap could be big enough, but with just 2 riders, one being slightly, I'd say, lightweight, down at 67 kilos for Elise, it'll really be tough to hold off this big chase group, especially as they're going to be so motivated. Fighting for first at the finish, and first on those foul points will make a big difference versus fighting for third and backwards. The bigger question will be, though, whether this chase group can get back on. 26 seconds is the gap now. They're really motoring. See all the dust kicked up by them. Get some lovely Zwift visuals there, just what we wanted. I'm sure it makes all the difference to your experience. And they're really sending it on this downhill. Always people constantly pushing the pace at their front. And 26 seconds will disappear very quickly. One important thing as well is next segment coming up is going to be the sprint. It's going to be FTS. So for a small group, they've got far less chance of setting FTS. Their entry speed will be lower, the amount of people they can draft off, and the length of that draft will be lower. So it's going to be much harder for that group of 7 and then 2 up the road to get it. It's almost in their benefit to join back up. Going back on the road just there, see lots of little small groups just forming. It's much more enjoyable to ride at least with someone else. Gives you the motivation to keep pushing, keep working. But going back to the front, 9 seconds the gap now. Both of these level riders are really working well together, taking turns on the front at 4 and a bit watts per kilo. Sensational teamwork for 2 riders on different teams. And that's how you kind of don't see enough of in Zwift. People actually working together across teams to stay away. I think most people just assume that riders are just going to sit in and do nothing, because for a lot of them that's in their interest to do. And people don't want to do more work than is necessary a lot of the time. But as we come in, start to take a little bit more control. Velos setting the pace, doing work at the front and taking little turns. You'd expect to see CLS also helping them, but you know, just because you expect it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I've regularly been in a position where other teams would expect me or my team to do work, and if it's not in our benefit, we won't. The CLS, you know, the two teams ahead aren't necessarily going to be close enough to be a threat to them, or at least possibly in their opinion. So they might not want to chase on as hard and just be content for other people to bridge the gap, and if it happens, it happens. Still seems to be a 25-second gap. This big group down the road. It's not closing as quickly as I would have expected. They took a lot of time on the initial dirt. But as again to this part, perhaps they are happy there for the sprint and don't necessarily want to close it up before then. Expect the group that big, there's not enough ways to communicate, and there'll be someone pushing the pace or not thinking the same way. But no one's really taking control at the front. Everyone's around 2.5, just constantly cycling around at the front. Get it? Cycling. But no real concerted effort. Let's see up the road. They're really trying to chase down now. See Velos especially, but TBR, Parker taking little pulls on the front as well. CLS were there for a few seconds before we jumped onto them, and they've started to make up time. As level velo riders up the road have slowed down to 3 watts per kilo. Possibly they know this gap's going to be caught. And, you know, if you've accepted that and realise it's happening, you want it to happen sooner rather than later. You want to be able to sit up, relax, save some legs. As if it's rotating between 7 riders behind you taking pulls. It's far better to save your legs than to take a pull every other time. You know, yes, you make them work harder, but you're making 1 or 2 of the 7 work harder, not all of them. There's going to be at least 1 or 2 riders there sitting in doing nothing who could take your spot. So here we have it. Front group of 9 now. Real big credit to those level riders, especially for staying away for so long. What'll be interesting is how they're thinking about it now. So on the last lap, we've got the same route, and we finish at the sprint coming up ahead. There's no points for that segment, but there will be finish points when we get through it. There is points on this lap as well, don't worry. Still FTS points on this lap. But you see, you know, they know that they've got caught just before that. So is it in their effort? Is it worth it for them to try again? So we come into it, it'll be very interesting tactically now, how they play it out. It's definitely an opportunity to set FTS here, but you'd think the group ahead's definitely got an advantage. So unless you're a really big sprinter and think you're going to get dropped by this group going up the climb, you might better just sitting in, saving your energy, trusting your teammates behind to get the points, knowing that the climb's going to be more valuable to you coming up. Especially as everyone here is going to get points first across the line on it. Let's see. Elise pushing a little bit, but it's going to be too little too late. They are starting to send it here. 11, 12 watts per kilo for some of them, but there's no point doing it at that stage. They got through the banner start before they even started winding up. And I doubt any of those times are particularly under 9 seconds. So the real question is what this chase group's going to go. See one rider seeming to have gone along off the front, but there we go. See the likes of CH from Eagle Fang. Everyone winding up much, much earlier. Coming through the segment, 67 kilometers an hour. Absolutely huge. This is going to be a fantastic time. Did 9.19 first time round. And there we go, 8 there. So maybe a bit slower than I'd have expected, especially given those speeds. But again, that's huge time. And we saw a couple of riders there going sub 7. Amazed to see it sub 8. It's real strong push from them. Just think you might have been a bit unfortunate there just being off the front, whereas likes of Lee Wild there were just tucked in behind, were able to take advantage. He's putting out huge numbers, but no one to draft off. slow him down. But that was the difference. You know, he's hit the start segment at 60 kilometers an hour and could hold it through, and that's really what you're aiming for. You don't want to be hitting the start at anything below 60, whereas their front riders, some of them were hitting it at 50 and then accelerating up after they'd got into the segment. So back up the road, we've got a bit of a big group that's formed. About 6 riders, quite a few of the Cobra Kai, a couple of the Belgian Zwift riders. Again, gives a little bit more competition. I don't think it's big enough to really be concerned about them getting points in the sprint. I expect all the points on that FTS, if not pretty much all, the vast majority of them, have come from that huge group. See Iron just going hard for it. But again, going solo compared to that group, not really got much chance. You'd hope his teammates in this group would communicate that to him, knowing just how hard they went, just how high the speeds were. There's no chance of anyone else taking FTS points. You might as well save yourself for the climb and see what you can do. See that little group really sending it as well, working hard. See Aben there putting in a good time, but again, unlikely to be enough. Maybe just, as though all 4 of them going very hard very early, but again, it's not going to be troubling the top 3, top 5 of those FTS points. That's what the big points really are. Those one, I'll just get them on the screen for you just so you can see how they stack up. So it's really beneficial if you can get those top 5 FTS points. You know, it's still good points all the way back to 10th, but it's much better in terms of the points available to you getting those top 5, especially with the gaps between each being 2 or 3 points, rather than just gaps of 1. So as we've been through the banner, but this is where we start to see the Castle KOM kicking up a bit. So it's first across the line here. We've got this front group. Said it a few times. Not quite yet, but it is 9 riders. So there is going to be 1 set of foul points for the chase group behind, 28 seconds. So there's a chance that their chase group again could make it back up to some of these leaders. I don't think they're going to catch all of them, but they could make it up to a good bunch of them, especially if they start to struggle over the Temple KOM or slow up over the Temple KOM. But again, the vast majority of the points are going to come from this front group. Someone's remind everyone it's first across the line only. So it's nice and simple. You see further again, going for Sapphires. Elise Gallegos from Level Rubies, pushing hard as well. Same 2 up, leading the way as we saw earlier. But again, people should be wise to this now, aware that those 2 are going to try something. They want to push the pace, they want to make it hard and get a breakaway. So as soon as they move, you've got to be on their wheel working hard. So we've got a little bit of a flatter section, then we've got this long 30-second, maybe 40 seconds of uphill onto cobble, so slightly slower, but generally still quite draftable, high enough speeds for some. We're going to see people really send it there, trying to make it. See Tom van der Tom from Eagle Fang sending it hard early. That's quite an interesting attack. He could have definitely caught everyone by surprise by going that early. And it's not going to be a bad move. See it dip down, but then straight into the higher percents. And a good minute effort here should seal first across the line here. If you can hold these numbers, it's an incredible effort, an incredible attack. Big kudos. Because, you know, it's not where you expect it. You expect it to come here where you hit these 8-9% sections. But going early makes a big difference. As the people behind, they're still working at 5 watts per kilo. But that 4 or 5 second gap's going to be very hard to overcome. Especially as we get to the top, no one wants to do work. People tend to just sit in. They know it's flat, so they don't want to do anything extra. They just sit and wait for the sprint. And a sprint's not going to take 6 seconds on a short course like this, especially with a rider who's still working very hard and probably going to take more time out of them on the flats. See Paxton there reacting for Velos. But again, he's just getting to the front and just chilling. No one, just chilling at 5 watts per kilo, but relative to the 7 he was doing. See Van Ton, this is a huge effort. Really impressive. At this point, I'd kind of almost recommend him just to slow down a bit, save his legs for the Temple KOM. He's on the flats. There's no point doing above 5 here, and that's exactly what he's doing. He knows he's won the segment. He knows he's got first across the line, so he's got to make a decision either just to carry on, hold that gap for the Temple, but realistically the group's going to come through a bit too hot. So you take a look back at it as they start to sprint now. So he packs them towards the front on the level rubies. Is going to come through for that second place. Paxton will probably take third, and then who have we got in fourth? Is that Furler taking fourth? Good points again. Question is, are they all going to hold on together as a group? Let's take a look. Looks like Bates from Velas got dropped there. It's going to be disappointing. He's going to definitely be swept up, but it should hold. Yep, he's definitely going to hold off for the points, but he's going to get swept up by the group behind, I suspect, on the Temple KOM. So we're down to 8 in the front group now. It becomes really attritional. The question is, can Tom van der Tom for Eaglefang hold on now? He's putting that humongous 1 minute effort, probably longer than a minute at that point. Does he have anything left in the tank? There's no real reason for anyone to push crazily up here, but given what's happened already, given how hard we've seen riders pushing early, because that's the difference. Lots of riders will push when they need to take points for a segment, but the riders here, especially the level velo riders, level esports, I should really call them riders, have pushed really hard at the start of the climb. Exactly what you'd expect if you know you've got that fitness advantage. But I expect to see him again doing the same here. They've got a small group going into it, so if they split this up, even if it's just 2 of them off the front, it's going to be that much harder for others to chase them down. And that much harder for them to keep a reasonable gap on the climb itself, in fact. So here we go. Well, it starts steepening up, and this way you want to hit it hard. Riders are a bit settled. Again, if you know you've got the fitness advantage and other riders are punchier than you, sometimes it can be better just to enter it softly, as long as everyone else is doing. As soon as you hit the red numbers, people react. See Park there pushing hard, and see everyone else up to 6 watts per kilo. They saw him hitting red, so they push as well. In fact, if you're not, if you're not a punchy rider, you want to avoid that almost. You want riders just to kind of get into the grind, get into a slow pace where there's very little draft, and then just work your way away. As you see Little here struggling again. He struggled on the first lap on this section, just getting a bit further back than he might have liked, but came good later on. But I expect with such a small group, that might be the end of him in this lead group. The question is, can he hold off the group behind? 46 seconds, this massive chase group. Let's see how many riders in it. Looks about 12 riders. Looks more than 12 from that, but these riders now know Spielman's is very strong. They know they've got these single riders up the field. They've got Bates, they've got Little, and they can chase them down, and they have first finish points available in the top 10. See, Tommy Mullins just starting to drift back again here. Not what you want to see on the flats. You want to be taking advantage of the flats, getting a bit of recovery. So I suspect it's a case that he is starting to struggle. That 1 minute effort will definitely have hurt him, and perhaps wasn't the wisest of moves. But, you've got to score points when you can. And if you don't have a massive sprint, you can't guarantee that, then maybe that's the best way to do it. But if you have a strong sprint, sometimes it's better just to sit in, use your sprint, maybe sacrifice a couple of points, but have the energy to keep with the lead group until the finish and get higher finish points as well. Especially knowing that the segment coming up isn't a segment. This up here, the Temple KOM doesn't count for points, so maybe the pace won't be that hard. I'm surprised to see the level riders not pushing it. I thought they'd be going much harder than this up there. They're understandably knackered. They've just done a hard segment for points. I'd expect them to be trying to break off the front here. Down to, 7 riders? 6 riders? Yeah, if Tom's off the back. 6 riders in this lead group, a group of 2 off the front. They're unlikely to be caught. But you don't have much time left to do it. See, ST from Level Velo, Steve Trulemans pushing the pace and just getting a little bit of a gap over the field. 2 seconds now. It'll be hard to stay away solo, but you know, you've got to give it a go. No harm in doing so. And one of the other best climbers, Elise Gallagos, is his teammate. So she can just sit in and let him go. And if anyone reacts, go with them on their wheel. So coming to the last steep section, just around this bend is your last steep section of dirt. Oh, ignore me, one bend too early, we've got another steeper section. And this is the last extended steep section, let's try and rescue it. Of dirt. So you want to be doing the damage here, getting that gap. See, Tommy Mullins he's not drifted too far off the back. I'll be surprised if he makes it back on, because if he's drifted off the back, it's because he's on his limit, really struggling. He's not a rider who's just going to give in. He'll be really giving everything he has to keep with that front group. So, but if he can close that gap down, that'll be a fantastic result for him from the position he was in. It's really impressive. He's back up to 5 watts per kilo, really kicking on these steeper sections, riding cleverly. But yeah, maybe just doesn't quite have enough left in the tank. See, the 2 riders who dropped off the back have got a little group, 20 seconds ahead of the chasers. The chase group haven't quite made up the gap that I was expecting, and they're going to have a big advantage on the downhill. Expect to see at least 10 seconds gained just by being a bigger group on the downhill, let alone whatever work they do. Going back to the front, looks like he's got a 10-second gap now, Steve Trillermans. So that's very decisive, especially with it being onto the flats now. That gap can't come down quite as quickly. It's going to take someone working, and whoever works knows that they've got another one of his teammates just sat there ready to sprint through them at the end after they've done all the hard work chasing him down. Though it's strange to see his teammate now at least just chasing him down. Not quite sure what she's doing here. You'd think if you've got a teammate up the road, you'd just sit in, let others do the work. Because for your team, it's great if someone gets away, but maybe they just want the individual points. Maybe they could be very much a lot of rivalry in the team, not wanting to be beaten out. And ideally, you get in this situation, maybe you sit at the front, but doing significantly less than your rider up the road. Try and put anyone off chasing down. There we go, she sat back into the base of the group now. Again, pushing through hard. All these little bursts to the front he's doing just in kind of making it harder for a teammate off the front and just closing that gap down. But he's doing well. He's keeping a nice consistent pace, reacting to the bumps but not dropping down significantly, easing off for pedal strokes, just keeping it nice and smooth. See Van der Bosch pushing very hard, possibly thinks there are points available for the segment. Yeah, especially with the easing there. Not sure what the purpose of that was. He needs to probably check the segments if he can before going into the race, because that was a waste of a sprint there. Now we see people reacting now. Galagos pushing through hard, possibly seeing that he might be a bit tired, trying to drop him off the back. See Chile for Eagle Fang getting lapped there. Sadly must have had a dropout or an issue. Van der Bosch off the back for CLS. Should comfortably enough get back on. Looks like the gap's now 18 seconds. So this chase group's really sending it. 3 CLS riders at the front. They only have 1 rider in that lead group now. And oh, they've got 4 in this one, so definitely in their benefit to bring this higher up. Every person they can take is an extra place of points they might be able to get. They're really working it at the front. Really impressive from them. Do have 1 teammate higher up the road. With 4 in that pack, they're going to want to work hard. Take little turns. Take some lovely visuals Looks like this gap's just holding out. This where Chillerman's here just needs to be aware he can super tuck on a lot of this. Just get up to 57. Right now he could be super tucking and not pedaling, saving his energy. He's not going to gain much time at all by not doing it. Whether he's got, I mean, maybe he's got a ton of energy left and is able to push this all the way to the finish. In an ideal world, take advantage of the super tuck when you can. Especially in races, you save a lot of time and energy. It's just as fast as pedaling at like 3.5 watts per kilo. And on a downhill, that extra watts per kilo doesn't make much difference at all. So 10 seconds now. It's going to be a tight finish with these chasers. And again, looking at these groups down the road. 21 seconds. There's still... Again, some of this is just Zwift timings being a bit bizarre on the side. Again, they seem to have stopped kind of forcing it quite as much, chasing down quite as hard. Those riders up the road. Now they've caught a couple of them. It's a bit further back. We've got a couple more little groups, but it's a tough one when such a big group's formed ahead of you. If you haven't made it, then that can be it. I expect some of these riders might have been in it and dropped on that climb, as they were pushing very hard up the Temple KOM. It's good to see, trying to make that chase, trying to make an easier finish for some of those lighter riders. Maybe don't have the raw what's needed for the downhill finish that we're going to come into. So onto the road section now. Chillerman's is still holding off here. These 5 riders are going to be in a tough position, so the closer they get to the finish, the less likely they're going to want to work. They're going to want to conserve, have good position. You don't do a hard 1 minute effort just before the finish trying to close it down and then let all other riders with you, take advantage of that closing and then just pass you easily. So if they're going to make a big effort to close down, they need to do it soon. Remember, one of those riders is definitely, or should definitely just be sitting in. Though it doesn't seem to be the way that Elise rides here. She's regularly towards the front, pushing the pace, even with one of her riders up the road. It looks like Chillerman's taking even more time, keeping a really consistent pace. It's been at 4.3, 4.2 watt per kilo, and again on a little incline, so he's pushing it up. It's a real masterclass in TTing away. Maybe should have saved a little bit more with a super tuck, but he's not died off. He's not really dropped down significantly, so clearly knew he had the ability to get to the finish with these numbers. Big kudos. I would be amazed if he gets caught at this stage. It's an incredible solo effort to break away there. See, further from Sapphire's really kicking hard there, 7 watts per kilo. Possibly this is the moment they're going to go for it. Committing really hard to chase down, make that break happen. This is it. It's all or nothing now. We've got about 1 kilometre left to the finish. You can just see it appear in the top corner. They're not going to close that gap. I think maybe they've just realised that Fur's just eased off. Just giving a little push just to keep back on. I think at the moment they've kind of realised they're not going to gain quickly. If it's a downhill, it's high speed. Doing 7 watts per kilo is going to maybe get you 1 kilometre an hour, 2 kilometres an hour, more than doing 5. And that's nowhere near enough to catch with such a short distance left. So again, it's about positioning here as we come into the finish. Group of 5's not too dissimilar to a group of 3. Probably want to be towards the back, waiting for that jump. With a group of 5, maybe you can wait to be the 3rd rider to jump rather than being the 2nd in a group of 3. And it's very much about tactics, seeing what's happening and just being aware. This situation, I'm always kind of switching between watching the numbers on the right of my screen, watching the riders on the road, watching the numbers on the right, just constantly swapping between the two, seeing what's happening. As soon as I see it light up now, I've got to sprint. This is where you start to wind it. See park off front, you want to be winding it in the pack and then sending it as soon as you get someone else ahead of you. That's what we see Furler doing, but Furler's going to hit the front a bit too early. He went a little bit too early. Van der Bosch coming through for CLS, but he's just eased off. Oh, and there we go, Paxton coming through there. Parker in 3rd, Furler in 4th, Van der Bosch in 5th. Oh, and we've see if we can get back quickly onto other riders. It's one of the downsides of actually watching riders through the line. So you get kicked off the event, which isn't so fun. Jump back on now. There we go. Sorry about that. So we look. This group of 3 seems to have come together. Tommy Mullins sending it early. We've got riders in his wheel though. He's going to have to really hit it hard here. Velos Rider Bates has played it nicely, but just doesn't quite have the numbers there. He had the position, but 13 watts per kilo versus 9 is very hard to overcome, even with the draft. See people going very early here. Fino kicking possibly a bit too early for Velos. It's not quite hit the start of the segment. So Spielman's and Rob Pace coming through hard for Cobra Kai. Spielman's probably going to take it. He's got a little bit of an advantage there. Rob Pace maybe just coming through. Oh, just picked by one of the CLS riders. Again, very tight, and it's just showing again, you don't want to be the first rider to go. You don't even want to necessarily be the 2nd, 3rd rider is ideal in these biggest groups. Just having at least 2 rides up the road, especially when it sets off so early. And I'm going to be in the same position again where I can't follow those behind. Sorry about that. Oh, I saw Chili there, beating out Captain CH and Lee Wild in their group there. Who else we can get hold of? There we go. I've got a couple more solo rides, and we've got another group of 3. I always find one of the most interesting kind of combinations where these small groups are really interesting. I recommend to anyone, if you're just starting Zwift racing, just practice these over and over again. Get into situations. You know, it's not easy. And one of the best times to do it is a group ride, so you never know if those around you are actually going to race. But always just practice the tactics over and over again, because it doesn't matter how big a sprint you have. We saw one situation today where the biggest sprint actually worked in terms of holding someone off. The others, it was all a case about timing, positioning, when you went, rather than what you went with. So the more you practice, the more you kind of get used to these situations and don't have to think about it. It should just be instinct. As soon as you have to think, you're going to be a split second too late. When you're on Zwift, you already have a delay. So when you see someone going, they went about 2 seconds earlier, and it's going to take you another second or 2 to ramp up in-game because of connection things, unless you're on one of those new kicker bikes. Here we go, Ollie's gone at the front, but again, he's just leading riders out. Parks, if for level Sapphire, if he has any kind of kick, should be able to take him. But I'm not sure he just has the numbers. He might have left it a little bit late. That's going to be very tight. Oh. See there, 7 watts per kilo versus 8, 9. Again, more than enough to make the difference because of the positioning. Because he had that wheel. I thought he might not make it there. He really wasn't putting the numbers that you'd hope to see in a sprint finish. But just positioning was everything there. Another little 2 rides, leaving it very late here. And as we're coming through the line, 7 seconds to go to the line. Whoever jumps first here is now going to take this. It's not a case of doing the numbers. It's whoever jumps first. None of them have quite kicked. There we go. Iron going. It's just so close to the line. It doesn't matter what Leon does there. He's not going to make it on. See Price there jumping on Eben. Like both on the same team. But, at that point when you're racing for the same points, pride really comes into it. At the end of a long race like this, maybe not so much. And as soon as you get maybe within, I don't know, let's say 10 seconds, 150 meters of the line, it stops being a case of positioning. It's just whoever sprints first. There's not enough time to make up any kind of gap. Positioning only comes into it if you just happen to go at the exact same time. And that's where rides with higher watt per kilo start to have their advantage. The closer you get, they can have the bigger jump because they have the higher the higher raw watt per kilo. That's even a correct term. And that just essentially means they can accelerate a lot quicker. Whereas heavier riders have that momentum, they can hit the higher top speeds. So the longer the sprint, the more it suits those heavier riders. So then Nissan going quite early, but again, coming from the back. Berkman's doing the same numbers, but he's not going to be able to build up the speed quite enough to come back through. Very tight, putting a big effort there. But again, one of those cases where going first from deep played into his hands. He managed to build up enough speed, get enough of a gap off the front, that it wasn't closable enough, even hitting the draft. So you're going to come in and just follow this last group to the line, and we've all got solo riders. I'm afraid I'm not going to follow you home, Chili or Kurt. Sorry. So again, lots of rides at this point, leaving it very late. One thing that you can definitely catch people out with, especially on a course like this that's long and downhill, is going early. Because people don't necessarily want to chase. When you're this close to the line, going early maybe doesn't quite work in your favour, and I expect Brosehart here for TBR will take it. Maybe Adam might come through him, it'll be very close on the line. I think Brosehart will just pip him. Oh, just tiny amount there. But the early attack from maybe 700 metres out, a kilometre out, possibly even 2, 3, 4, 5 kilometres out, catches people by surprise. In a small group, people don't want to chase. If you get that 5, 10, 15 metre gap, then people sometimes just give in, because mentally you've got to be in a long, hard race. Some people just won't want to just keep working hard to jump back on the wheel, especially if you keep working for a few seconds. And so you can end it very early on rather than leaving it late. So I'm going to try and get some results up on the screen for you. Can't make any promises, but we'll see what ZwiftPower has ready and waiting. Just going to start off with the actual results on the line rather than the points. So as you saw Trullemans. I'll just call him Steve, from Level Esports, taking the win with a nice breakaway. Not those times aren't, I'm not sure what's going on with them. Certainly weren't 2 minutes ahead. But it was a really strong performance. And then Paxton with the big sprint, really well timed, well positioned, coming through for second for Team Velos. And it looks like Level can't quite identify which teams are which now, but I believe it was Trullemans and Gallagher's in the same team. I can't remember which one it was. And then Furley in the other. So it's going to be a strong performance from one of them, and especially with Team CLS and both dirt teams not quite performing maybe as they'd like to. Again, both getting strong performances. Both will probably be on the podium. The Quick Provence doing very well as well. Spielman's did nicely, just winning his little group, his big group that got whittled down towards that finish with the repeated attacks. Just see if we can get those final results up. Sometimes we get them. There we go. So we can see with the primes again, no promises that these are actually correct. Trulleman's taking first, just beating Paxton for Velos, and Spielman's in third. So you can see the difference that those segments make, especially with 4 of them. Finish points are important, they do help a lot, but those segment points really start to add up. You know, first place is 100 points, second place is 95. And, you know, first place would only get you joint 8th. Second place would only get you 12th. So it's really important that you get those segments as well if you're wanting to finish at the top. And again, as we said, it looks like a strong result for at least one of the Level Sports. Lee Wild doing really well, finished a bit further down, but strong performance on the segments to bump him up there. So we go down and see what we have so far. So there we go. Thanks very much for joining. Sadly, next week we probably won't be covering any of this division, or should we say this zone, the EMEA West, just because it's going to be a double race. So we've got back-to-back races. So I'll be following the Platinum Plus and the Platinum 1.5. If I do have time, I might try and jump on one of the Silver 2 or Silver 1 races. But we'll see what happens in terms of timings. Thanks very much for joining. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully I'll see you back next week and next season.